All right. I think we're live. Mic check 1 2 1 2. Mic check 1 2 1 2. If anyone in the chat can hear me, just push 1. All right, maybe people can hear me. Oh, okay. I got a confirmation from the chat. Thank you for the confirmation. Welcome back to the Black Brain Trust. This is episode 478. African tech startups, space and technology. Please hit the like button as you come in, share the video if possible, and hit that notification bell so you get all the updates from the Black Brain Trust, including those posted on the community tab. Document and description beneath the video for you to follow along with. If you want to engage in the discussion, there'll be a link in the chat for you to click on. When you click on the link, make sure you raise your hand so that one of us can acknowledge you to advance you to the panel.
Yeah. 1, 2. We ain't even got spit 16s on this. Hey yo, this the best thing that ever happened to rap. Since Big Pun was packing the Mac in the back of the act. It's like getting pulled over by police with a loaded mag and duffel bag and crack in the back. Y'all in hot water. Y'all crab motherfuckers that got too hot in the pot and you got slaughtered. Manager got sorted, you got shorted. We turned around, put it out in the block for it.
Yo, I got rhymes and gas that I'm concealing. If rap is the floor, hip hop is the ceiling. Led from jump, never was we trailing. Before you fight me, you better fight the feeling, nigga. Face it, guard, the base is broad. Edo is grimy, Ace is hard. You can catch 2 L's like your name was James Todd A&E. Avant-garde, the hit squad.
Yo, y'all dudes are similar to cinema. Trained actors like Brad and Jennifer. But yo, I got a flow like Angelina. And I'm a king like Billie Jean, promoter Don and Regina. We've been doing this as long as y'all been alive. So little boys, keep your mouth shut when the men arrive. I look mean as a motherfucker when I drive the chromed out black 450 like 10 to 5.
You'll get bodied hard, so you better have a bodyguard. I get that green like Swiss chard. When the flames pop, you'll never gain props. When the game stops and your chain pops, we getting off at the same stop. I could understand the ocean by looking at a raindrop. We everywhere, you in the same spot. I'ma make it so you rappers never ever name drop.
Yeah, your girl's on my wood like a hungry beaver. If she telling you she home with a fever, nigga, don't believe her. She on top of me, I'm underneath her. Cause your swag is a legal procedure like one receiver. Women hate a grown man with feminine traits. And your body gel kinda smell like cinnamon grapes. Your shampoo's like fruit passion. You the ass in the Louis store, trying to find some cute fashion.
You a no-show, and you won't blow. The people who know aren't talking. The people who are talking don't know. You a hobo. You get ate like Ocho by my vocals. I'm #1. Twist your wig like a cummerbund. This whole industry is troublesome. We pop rappers like bubblegum. Don't confuse A&E with them other ones.
When it's time to get wild on stage, I can spit H like Lynn Swan, Alan Page, or maybe Randy Moss in his college days when he was going through that childish phase. But listen, what you witnessing is violent rage. Kinda like a lion that got out his cage. It's the underground sound that pays. Me and Crazy Eddie go together like brown and beige.
Yeah, the game of soap opera, the days of our lives. Rappers talk shit, then they apologize. No substance, hollow guys. That's why I do my 1-2 and don't follow lies. I'm wax, you Serato guys. You bullshit, and Edo is bona fide. My dogs sick 'em, get 'em. Now they play victim, ain't about them toys, it's about who playing with 'em.
All right, man. Let me get started. Let me get shout out to people in the chat. Peace to Mufasa. Mega Montana, peace to you. Black Scorpion, peace. Terrence Forrest Jr., what up? Keep it techie, peace. I see people are liking the music, so I'll definitely keep that in mind. You know, when we go live going forward, that you know, people are feeling it. All right, let's get started, man. DE Raptor Shalom. What's going on? Keep it ticking.
What's up, Mike? How you doing, man?
Might want to put some volume on your mic, bro.
Hold on 1 second.
Sound like you got a Corsair headset, gaming headset.
Can you hear me better now? Can you hear me now?
We can hear you, bro. What's going on, Wesley? All right, let's get started, man. This is from datasociety.net. Tech colonialism today. This is a 19-minute read. I'm not going to read the whole thing. I'm going to read probably about 5 minutes of it and give my synopsis. We'll go around and round robin style. So we are here today to consider whether we, as anthropologists and research practitioners, may be part of the industries that are colonial. And if our industries are colonial enterprises, we will consider what we can do about it. To make something well, Ursula Lee Gwynn tells us, it is to give yourself to it, to seek wholeness, to follow spirit, to learn to make something well can take your whole life. It's well worth it. Sorry, it's worth it. Let's see if we can make something well together. To begin my talk, then, I would like to acknowledge that we are today on the territory of the Narragansett and the Wampanoag peoples on the island of Aquanet, or possibly Aquanet, so it's spelled, it's pronounced two different ways. On the continent known as Turtle Island, I would also like to acknowledge that the braided histories of slaves and freed slaves who settled these lands and the intertwining of those histories with the stories of immigrants who work in the kitchens, the houses, and the fields of Aquanet Island. So let me skip past this. What was and is colonialism? At its simplest, colonialism is a practice of acquiring full or partial control of over another country, territory, or people, occupying it, sometimes with settlers, sometimes indirectly, and exploiting it economically. This definition is, however, too narrow to capture the full range of effects that are part of the structure of colonial relationships. Colonialism is also a historical relationship by which Europe expanded its borders of control, fought wars by proxy, drained the wealth of other countries, established an often violent system of rule to govern those territories' populations, instituted a global pattern of slavery and indentured servitude, and developed a rule of law that applied fully only to Europeans themselves, but was taken up by the rest of the world as a mandate for full human rights. Colonial rulers also deployed methods of scientific discovery that used the colonies as a laboratory and testing ground for experimentation. As Franz Fanon argued in The Wretched of the Earth, in concrete terms, Europe has been bloated out of all proportions by the gold and raw materials from such colonial countries as Latin America, China, and Africa. The riches which are choking it are those plundered from the underdeveloped peoples. Fanon also suggested that perhaps everything needs to be started over again: the soil, the subsoil, the rivers, and why not the sun? From the start, colonialism wove together private and government apparatuses. The East India Company, to take the colonial example I know best, began as a trading enterprise funded by imperial capital. It was given a contract to act on behalf of the British Crown until that contract was rescinded and the British government took direct control of India. This public-private partnership beginning at the Battle of Plassey in 1757 and extending all the way to 1858, included funding military operations to expand territory. In other words, a private company had a private army and funded an entire knowledge apparatus to learn the country. The East India Company aimed to have comprehensive knowledge of the people, the territory, the flora and fauna, and the languages and the political systems of the country they aimed to rule. In the process of acquiring this knowledge, they enacted broad changes in all of these systems, taxonomizing and hierarchizing the knowledge they collected in new ways that they would go on to shape the legal, political, social, and environmental systems of independent India. The anthropologist Bernard Cohn, who anticipated the interventions of Edward Said and Michael Foucault in his writings on culture, knowledge, and power in India, called these processes part of the dominant style of thought that prized certain, mostly textual knowledges to create a picture of Indian society as being static, timeless, and spaceless. All images that serve to bracket out colonial subjects as recipients of European largesse. This very brief overview of the basic relationship between the colonial power and colonial knowledge helps us distill some of the characteristics of a colonial relationship. We will use these characteristics to make a determination about the current age and its own centers of power. We will ask, is tech colonial? Is tech colonial? A colonial relationship is hierarchical, extractive, and exploitative. It produces uneven consequences and malevolent patternisms. Colonial relationships presume and create presumed superiority and inferiority hierarchies between colonizing and colonized people in places. Colonial relationships are also extractive. This extraction was initiated to reverse the flow of capital from Europe to Asia and Africa, and took the form of stealing lucre directly from the Americas, taxing on demanding tribute from the peoples of Asia and Africa, and establishing monoculture slave plantations as a main driver for public-private imperial relationships. Colonialism is exploitative through labor relationships that take advantage of the state monopoly over violence, either directly or indirectly through pressure applied to punitive independent states. The uneven consequences of colonialism are felt across the entire system. In the realm of science and technology, risks are generally borne by colonial subjects, while metropolitan elites assume the role of developers and innovators of new technologies. Finally, the malevolent paternalism of colonial relationships means that solutions are always preferred in the name of and for the good of the colonized. Yet the colonized themselves are not recognized as full and legitimate participants in producing those solutions. Given this overview, we're now in a position to ask, is tech colonial today? Here are some of the things we know about how data, new applications, and social media are developed across the globe. One, they are hierarchical. The companies that produce these technologies also produce an ideology of superiority that data journalist Meredith Brossard calls techno-chauvinism. Techno-chauvinism describes the belief of a small group of fairly homogenous people located primarily in Silicon Valley that they are the best people to deploy a small set of algorithmic applications to administer human life. A corollary of this belief is the ideology of meritocracy, a dog conviction that despite all evidence of uneven social and economic conditions and histories, it is individual effort and cleverness that promotes some communities over others. As Ajanta demonstrates, the presumed hierarchies that are part of the techno-chauvinism are also transnational. Indian engineers trained at the Indian Institutes of Technology also share this faith in each other as upper caste men, and in the algorithm they create as superior. Two, on extraction. The extractive nature of techno-colonialism resides in the minerals that need to be mined to make the hardware for products, as well as the knowledge that comes through native pharmaceutical and technical traditions. In his work on the environmental history of computing, Nathan Ensmerger traces a periodic table of rare earth metals mined and incorporated into devices. Likewise, anthropologist Corey Hayden's work explores how U.S. pharmaceutical companies extract biological and botanical knowledge from the people of Mexico in order to create new drugs. The extractive nature of contemporary technologies also applies to the much more widely covered case of data extraction. According to the analysis provided by Shoshana Zuboff and Nick Holdry, this extraction mostly focuses on data gleaned from the streams of information given up as residents of all countries go online, register for state benefits, and connect with one another through applications, those whose terms of service demand they give up their personal and private information. This extraction of information is then treated as raw data to be processed by tech companies. This is certainly an important aspect of current relations of power the world over. Yet, over-reliance on the issue of data colonialism obscures the complicated welter of colonial relationships that cut across technological infrastructures and the imaginaries of person, place, and power that accompany them. In particular, the focus on data extraction misses the material extraction of minerals and the specific place of ex-colonial countries and still colonized populations within the relations of power that cut across tech worlds. So point three is exploitation. Everyday forms of exploitation are part of labor relationships in outsourcing programming, in gig economy work, and in the multiple forms of labor that are hidden and ghost in making technologies appear to function without human assistance. In a detailed account of micro work, the small jobs mediated through in large online markets like Amazon's Mechanical Turk that people around the world do as kind of piecework. Mary Gray and Sudhir Shuri showed that this kind of labor is both hidden and organized in such a way as to keep the labor from being collectivized or adequately remunerated. Even while, as a percentage of the global economy's microwork is increasing. Data and Society senior researcher Alex Rosenblatt's account of Uber drivers details the techniques companies use to classify workers as customers, even while managing their labor through incentives and penalties in the same way as an employer would. Labor researchers Aya Nguyen and Alexandra Matisu point out that rather than being replaced by robots, workers' quality of life will be affected by algorithmic systems that surveil their movements in the name of increased efficiency. So I'm not going to read this whole thing because it's 20 minutes long, but I think this is actually a really good read because we talked about this when I went to Africa last month for Africa Tech Summit. This was a part of the conversation. How do you protect data of melanated people without them being exploited? And so my suggestion was create the policy and regulatory framework so that Africans own all melanated people own all of the data. I'm referring to Africans when I say this. And so if the tech companies want the data, they have to compensate the people for the data before they can extract it out. And so that the people who don't have bank accounts but have a phone could be compensated, which would increase the wealth of people by 60 to 70% overnight. Whether it's cryptocurrencies or the state currency, either way, it's better that they're compensated for it than not compensated for it. And this is a part of the problem, is that you have people who don't think long-term that this is going to have a massive impact. Africa has 1.2 billion people right now, but they're projecting by 2050, they're going to have 2 billion people. 65% of their population are under the age of 30. This is a problem.
Mike, if I can add on, one thing that came to mind is that when it comes to big data, there's really only one.
Did you just go out or is it me?
No, I think he went out.
Give him a few seconds. Is he still here? All right.
Like he's muted now.
Yeah, go ahead, Techie. If you guys
okay, yeah, I was just gonna add to it. I mean, what comes to mind to me is Facebook doing this back in a couple of years ago when they with the whole Cambridge Analytica thing, and then they ran. It was almost like running tests on mice, how they do in the lab, but they ran basically tests on different people. I think it was some Latin countries. I'm not sure. I can't remember, but they were feeding news as well as other political things into the people's feeds. And to try to, I don't know, it was just try to see what type of results they would get from, or what type of conversations would happen at the end of the day. I don't know, but I mean, that just popped up in my head when you first started talking about it. And then also the whole 23andMe thing, you know what I'm saying? All these different companies, pulling, data to, I don't know, to come up with drugs and all that stuff. I believe they're doing the same thing, selling it to these pharmaceutical companies. So I mean, people should get compensated for it. I know y'all did a stream on that a while back. Uh, I mean, this stuff is owned by you as a person. So
Yeah,
um,
yeah. The companies
yeah,
are actually getting it for free.
yeah, I know.
Yeah, and people don't really think about that, man. They're so willing to give their data to somebody. It's like, wait a second here, man. You don't have to
Mhm.
tell them everything about yourself.
Yeah, exactly. I don't know if I made sense. I mean,
No,
that's what came to mind though.
no, you did. I
Yeah.
forgot about the 23andMe thing.
Yeah.
Um, did 23andMe go out of business or what?
I'm not sure if they still in business. I
Mhm.
haven't seen a one of their advertisements in a while, so maybe they are, you know. So
I heard, but wasn't sure because I'm finding it interesting that you actually bring them up too. Wesley, can you hear us? Right, he's having technical difficulties, so oh, he's gone. Okay.
I don't know if you want to answer engineering cannabis question before you go to the next one. He was asking, how do you protect your data?
Um, how you protect data is one, the source of the data, where it's housed, would have to be encrypted. That's one thing. But policy is more important than just the encryption itself, because depending on how many um, data points that data transgresses or traverses, it could be a myriad of places that are not encrypted, right? And so what I'm saying here is the first portion is that all devices that are electronic must protect user data. That's one. Number two, any tech company that holds sensitive data or PII has to comply with regulatory framework as well as state policies or statutes. You're holding this user's data, you're going to be responsible for it, um, and you're not allowed to extract the data from the user without their permission, right? So, like this right here, it says, we use cookies to offer you better browsing experience, analyze site traffic, personalized content, and serve targeted advertisements. Read about how we use cookies by clicking the cookie. See, this sort of prompt that comes up should come up on a person's smartphone or tablet that says, hey, based on such and such of cookies and user behavior, we monitor this or we want this data, and they have to have a sort of agreement. But this is where blockchain and smart contracts come in, right? A smart contract would say, no, you cannot have my data, or yes, you can have my data, and it authorizes that data. But in the authorization, you're being compensated with a cryptocurrency or some other form of currency in exchange at the same time. If that makes any sense.
No, that makes perfect sense.
That should be the case, but I had this conversation. I'll be over there next week, having the same conversation again in South Africa. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah, but if I could add to that though, I mean there are a number of ways to protect when you're talking about your digital footprint, but not like biological stuff. Um, I mean that's why I kind of push
Mhm.
Linux. I know I don't do many videos on actually protecting yourself other than like passwords. I've done videos on passwords and stuff, but um, I mean there are some ways to kind of mask your traffic and as well as encrypt your computer, your personal computer.
Mhm.
Yeah. I mean, just all that basic stuff that you can do to help. But if the government wants your information, they can come out there and get your information.
Yo, the
It's
government
kind of
wants
nothing
it,
you can really do about it.
yeah, that's true. The government, if the government wants it, but the tech companies are making profit off of this stuff, then they should not be able to access it, right?
Yep.
So that's my point, right? Is that the policy mechanisms need to be built into the devices itself. So part of the problem is that people install apps on their phone, Candy Crusher and all these other stupid apps, and all you do is say yes, 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 yes to everything. Next thing you know, you didn't read the fine print, so now it's extracting all this personal information off your phone. Like, Josh, why do you need your refrigerator on your network? What do you need that for?
Yeah, it's no point.
You want milk, right? You just go down the store and get it, right? All right, this one is from technologyreview.com. How to know if artificial intelligence is about to destroy civilization. These canaries in the coal mines of AI would be signs that super intelligent robot overloads are approaching. Could we wake up one morning dumbstruck that a super powerful AI has emerged with disastrous consequences? Books like Superintelligence by Nick Bostrom and Life 3.0 by Max Tegmark, as well as more recent articles, argue that malevolent superintelligence is an existential risk for humanity. I'm not going to read this whole thing, but one can speculate endlessly. It's better to ask a more concrete empirical question. What would alert us that superintelligence is indeed around the corner? We might call such harbingers canaries in the coal mines of AI. If an artificial intelligence program develops a fundamental new capability, that's the equivalent of a canary collapsing, an early warning of AI breakthroughs on the horizon. Could the famous Turing test serve as a canary? The test, invented by Alan Turing in 1950, posits that human-level AI will be achieved when a person can't distinguish conversing with a human from conversing with a computer. It's an important test, but it's not a canary. It is rather the sign that human-level AI has already arrived. Many computer scientists believe that if that moment does arrive, superintelligence will quickly follow. We need more intermediate milestones. So this is actually true, because you go on some of these dating websites and apps, and a lot of guys think they're interacting with a woman, and in fact, it's a bot. It's AI talking back to them. They send a dick pic over there, and then they come back and catch a case, man. Then they're done. Is AI's performance in games such as Go, Poker, or Quake 3 a canary? It is not. The bulk of so-called artificial intelligence in these games is actually human work to frame the problem and design the solution. AlphaGo's victory over Human Go champions was a credit to the talented human team at DeepMind, not to the machine, which merely ran the algorithm the people had created. This explains why it takes years of hard work to translate AI success from one narrow challenge to the next. Even AlphaZero, which learned to play World Chess Go in a few hours, has substantially broadened its scope since 2017. Methods such as deep learning are general, but their successful application to a particular task requires extensive human intervention. So that's why sometimes you'll play a game and you'll be like, yo, the computer is cheating. That's because the AI and the machine learning that works in the background has already figured it out before you did.
Yeah.
Can y'all hear me now?
Yeah, what's going on, bro?
Thank God. All right, continue. My bad for interrupting.
Oh, sorry. More broadly, machine learning is at the core of AI successes over the last decade or so. Yet the term machine learning is a misnomer. Machines process only a narrow sliver of humans' rich and versatile learning capabilities. To say that machines learn is like saying that baby penguins know how to fish. The reality is adult penguins swim, capture fish, digest it, regurgitate it into their beaks, and place morsels into the children's mouths. AI, likewise, being spoon-fed by human scientists and engineers. In contrast to machine learning, human learning maps a personal motivation to a strategic learning plan. A human formulates specific learning targets, collects and labels data, and incorporates external feedback and background knowledge. Humans identify, frame, and shape learning problems. None of these human abilities is even remotely replicated by machines. Machines can perform superhuman statistical calculations, but that is merely the last mile of learning. The automatic formulation of learning problems, then, is our first canary. It does not appear to be anywhere close to dying. Self-driving cars are a second canary. They are further in the future than anticipated by boosters like Elon Musk. AI can fail catastrophically in atypical situations, like when a person in a wheelchair is crossing the street. Driving is far more challenging than previous AI tasks because it requires making life critical real time decisions based on both the unpredictable physical world and interaction with human drivers, pedestrians, and others. Of course, we should deploy limited self driving cars once they reduce accident rates. But only when human level driving is achieved can this canary be said to have keeled over. AI doctors are a third canary. AI can already analyze medical images with superhuman accuracy, but that is only a narrow slice of a human doctor's job. An AI doctor would have to interview patients, consider complications, consult other doctors, and more. These are challenging tasks that require understanding people, language, and medicine. Such a doctor would not have to fool a patient into thinking it's a human. That's why this is different from the Turing test, but it would have to approximate the abilities of human doctors across a wide range of tasks in unanticipated circumstances. So I'm going to stop there. But to the point about the doctors is that AI is not meant to actually replace doctors. It's actually meant to enable doctors from an assistant standpoint. So doctors want let's say a theoretical outcome of a patient's condition. The AI would actually go through multiple segments of data correlated about the patient's condition, and then provide a real-time result of a possible outcome. And so it's not meant to replace the doctor, because the relationship between the doctor and the patient is so personal and so so volatile. There's no way that the AI would be able to do that, because the AI does not have emotion. It's not built with emotion. It's built with code. And there's no emotion in code, at least not as of yet. So yeah, Darkside got it right. He said augmented doctors. Yeah, he's right about that. Anybody else have anything you want to add to this? All right.
I was trying to let Weezy go because he couldn't speak earlier.
Yeah. What I wanted to,
okay.
if I can just say what I wanted to speak earlier was that, in terms of data colonialism, there's mainly two players in town, but most likely just one, and that's the United States and China. But the United States pretty much has all the big data collection companies like Google, Facebook, Twitter, and all these other global multinational data gathering services. And we've seen what the EU has been doing is that they have slowly started to start regulating those data companies. And I think over time, like you guys were talking about, countries will start pushing to have their own regulations, and then also like Macron is trying to do, they're going to start trying to have homegrown data collection companies, because as a nation state, this having data of your citizens is very vital.
Which country is this?
Huh?
Which country is this?
France. Macron has been pushing for having homegrown tech companies.
Right. Makes sense.
Because Europe doesn't have any, like Germany's really good at high-end manufacturing of cars and robotics, but they don't really have next generation of machine learning and pretty much artificial intelligence. They're pretty much out of that race, other than China, which is the second biggest competitor out there.
Right. They don't have a Silicon Valley, so to speak.
Yeah, so their only place and position is to try to regulate it just like everyone else.
Mm-hmm. All right, this is from inc.com. MIT published a list of 9 megatrends that will shape the world in 2030. Here's what they all have in common. Climate change, transparency, and nationalism will be driving the workforce 10 years from now. For decades, the Massachusetts Institute of Technology has generated some of the world's greatest innovators, entrepreneurs, and startups. MIT has built a strong research and engineering culture since its founding in 1861, producing dozens of Nobel laureates along the way. 3Com, Akamai, Bose, Dropbox, Intel, iRobot, Khan Academy, BuzzFeed, HP, and Qualcomm all have MIT roots. So I always pay attention to the list published in MIT's in-house journal, the MIT Sloan Management Review. Understanding change is at the heart of the entrepreneurship. As a founder, you need to spot unmet needs arising from changes in demographics, politics, and innovation. If you fail to do so, you may fail yourself. Last year, MIT published a list by futurist Andrew Winston of the biggest megatrends that will impact the world by 2030. Winston's pedigree is extensive. His clients include McDonald's, Apple, Bank of America, Walmart, HP, Disney, and Cisco. Here is his list. Explanations of mine. Number one, demographics. People are living longer. By 2030, more than 1 billion people will be over 65. So they're talking about aging. Urbanization, more and more people will move to cities. By 2030, more than 2/3 of the world will live in urban centers. All the more reason why Black people get gentrified out of these, these cities. Number 3, transparency. The amount of data collected on every person, product, and organization will continue to grow exponentially, as will the pressure to share that information. Keeping secrets will no longer be possible. Yeah, we talked about this. So about data privacy, almost nothing will be private anymore. Number 4 is climate crisis. Despite rising awareness, governments continue to struggle to balance long-term environmental needs with short-term economics. So we talked about this in the past, that climate change actually impacts Black people in this country more than anything, more than anybody else, because of their areas being considered to be 10 degrees hotter than other non-Black areas, because the environment has very little vegetation. And so the sort of environment absorbs summer heat in ways like an oven. And basically the people inside that environment tend to suffer more, which decreases their lifespan, which also impacts their quality of life, and also in terms of water consumption and infrastructure and things of that nature. Number 5, resource pressures. Water will be a stress resource. Many cities will be constantly in a state of water shortage and drought. We just talked about that a few seconds ago. Number 6, clean tech. Because of numbers 4 and 5, we will also see an explosion of data-driven technologies that make our collective infrastructure substantially more efficient. Yeah, so all your grid meters that sit in your basement or on the outside of your house will be IoT based. So will be putting out data to your utility grid, which will then determine how much electricity and other resources that need to be dispersed in that area. Number 7, the technology shifts. Connectivity will continue to spread. 2030 will also see affordable AI achieve human levels of intelligence. We just talked about artificial intelligence, canary in the coal mine. So they're not that far off with this prediction. I do see exponential growth every 3 years or so. Less than every presidential cycle, you're starting to see massive growth. So in 2017, they were able to develop AI to, actually learn how to play chess. And then now you're talking about the next level would be AI just basically doing most basic childlike functions, signing applications or signing papers and writing and things of that nature all on its own. As long as you present information to it, it would actually do it on its own. Some of the most rudimentary sort of areas of activity of human life.
Yeah, kind of like the AI Google, is implementing with where it can set appointments for you and all that.
Yep.
Yeah. And it's cool. It sounds like you're talking to a human, but it's actually not a human. It's the AI responding based on your responses.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that was
Good point, George. All right, number 8 is global policy. Global problems require globally unified responses, yet it seems less and less likely that nation states will be able to effectively govern collectively, let alone collaboratively. As a result, it will be up to business to take the lead on solving these issues. So they're talking about a more technocratic society, okay, leaving it in the hands of the technocrats. Our number 9 is nationalism. The rise of nationalism may increase with xenophobia continue to grow. So you're seeing Black people are no stranger to xenophobia and racism. So you're seeing white people leverage the technology from an AI standpoint, from a data analytics standpoint, for police work and job applications and things of that nature, just constant discrimination. So xenophobia is something that Black people are not strangers to. What these megatrends have in common is acceleration. Not only does it seem that innovation is speeding up, it seems that it's doing so exponential. Solutions are known for many of the issues discussed above, but the will for implementation and its execution isn't there. For example, we've known for years what is required to avert climate catastrophe, yet many of the world's leaders seem intent on maintaining the status quo. Because then they don't feel, because there's a profit to be driven here, so, or to be gained from it. So,
but at the same time, for these countries to fully develop, they got to take advantage of carbon resources as well.
mm-hmm.
So, like for China's development, they have to continue to use coal. Like in the next 5 years, I believe they're going to open as much coal plants. They're going to open in the next 5 years. Their coal plants are going to produce as much CO2 as all of Europe combined. That's in addition to what they already have.
Because it's dirt cheap for them to actually do it rather than to build a nuclear power plant.
Yes.
Yeah. And most of the coal is coming from North Korea, so which is dirt cheap.
Very dirt cheap.
Yeah, pennies on the dollar. They don't have to really pay for it. So there's an abundance of it. All right. Other than trend number 9, most of the megatrends are one-way swings with no coming back. For example, it is unlikely the world over the next decade will become less impacted by climate change, overcome resource scarcity, or be less transparent. Nationalism, on the other hand, could swing back. Yeah, we've talked about this before. Black people in America, Dr. Claude Anderson said by 2053, that Black wealth will be at 0 or less than that, collectively speaking. And so what happens from a nationalist standpoint is that Black people won't be a part of the conversation because they didn't, unless they do something now to integrate themselves into fourth industrialization, they won't be a part of that conversation at all. And so they'll get left behind, and they'll be, basically excommunicated from any sort of political scene as well as the industrialization scene. They're just not a part of it because they're not driving it or they're not involving themselves in it. And so I talk about Africans actually being at the forefront because of how they're moving now, right? People have gotten on me about this before, that I say that Africans are at least 10 years ahead in terms of intellectual capacity, because they're thinking about how do they leverage the technology to advance themselves within the countries that they reside in. Whereas in America, Black people are kind of just using the technology from a consumption standpoint and not really driving it, and don't have any sort of real perspective on actually where it should be driven, because they're not involved in those. They're not thinking on that level for all intents and purposes. I won't read any more of this, but I think this is actually a pretty good read. It's in the chat if anybody else wants to read it for themselves. Oh man. All right, I'll skip over that. Kind of mad about that. Yeah. Damn.
Yeah, I noticed that as well, man. I got the same error. I'll be following along with the links.
Yeah. Not sure why it does that. It was working just a half hour ago. Now it's not working.
Does Boston vote on Super Tuesday?
Yes.
Ooh.
All right, this is from aseeprism.org. Engineering and computer science, time to separate. I'm not going to read this whole thing because this is this is old. I'm not sure how it ended up in the docket, but oh, it was in the email. Okay, somebody sent it. A huge demand for coding skills encourages a push for independent colleges or departments, but finding faculty won't be easy. When chemical engineering major Catherine Steinberg struggled with a lab report that involved complicated graphing, her friends in computer science suggested that she try the programming language known as R. Shoot, she told them, I don't know how to do that. It was one among many instances where Steinberg, now beginning her senior year at Case Western Reserve University, wished she had learned more computer skills. She's not alone. Students nationwide in a variety of majors have for years been recognizing the need for expanded computer expertise in their classwork and in the post-graduation marketplace. Many are adding it to their already burdensome course loads. The result is surging demand that possesses major academic and organizational challenges for universities. Among them is the question of splitting computer science away from engineering. The number of computer science majors at major North American universities has more than tripled since 2006, and interest in computer training among non-majors appears to be growing even faster. According to last year's annual university survey by the Computing Research Association, CRA, the reason isn't hard to see. College graduates who don't have sufficient computing expertise will have more trouble getting hired and face lower salaries when they do. According to a study this year by IBM, Burning Glass Technologies in Business Higher Education Forum. Employers tell us they want certain skill sets, particularly artificial intelligence, machine learning, and data sciences, Says Darrell Pines, Dean of Engineering at the University of Maryland, College Park. All engineering and computer science students should have some fundamental instruction in those skills. He says, we at Maryland have created a minor in AI ML for students to get these skills and tools going forward. Faculty shortage. If the students can find the time for extra computer courses, their universities and teachers often can't supply them. The CRA survey found that the number of tenure track faculty is increasing only about a tenth as fast as the number of computer science majors, with more than a third of institutions already acknowledging a resulting drop in student performance. It's a supply and demand dilemma with no simple solution. Students are flocking to computer courses because of the high pay and plentiful job options, and those same benefits make it hard for colleges to attract and retain faculty with valuable computer skills. We have to actually admit this is a real problem. Charles Isbell, Executive Associate Dean of Georgia Tech's College of Computing, told National Science Board in July in a panel discussion on artificial intelligence. We've had 30% reduction in computer science PhDs who have gone into academia. They are all going into industry. Universities are trying various solutions, including developing new methods for teaching larger groups, offering computer engineering minors in optional courses, reassessing computer-related degree in job classification, charging more for high-demand majors, and developing private partnerships. One potential remedy with support among some academic and industry experts seems to be especially difficult for many universities to pull off: organizational restructuring. The idea is that computing has grown so fast in so many parts of universities that institutions could achieve much greater efficiencies and make themselves more attractive to students, faculty, and funders by combining all or nearly all of their computer-related educational content into a single school. That argument was put forward recently by two major studies on how to handle the boom in demand for computer science. One, soon to be published by the CRA, argues that computer science has grown markedly distinct from its traditional home in colleges of engineering, science, and liberal arts, especially in its wide applicability and value to other majors. A single computer-focused school is easier to manage, expands opportunities for fundraising and research grants, and help build an institutional reputation for excellence in the field, says the association's executive director, Andrew P. Burnett. So I'm not going to read this whole thing, but the problem I see is that, and we covered this before, is that a lot of the people are going into these programs with no sort of strong STEM background. And so they're starting from zero when they get to college, but in reality, the high schools should be teaching all this stuff at the beginning and not at the end, right? They shouldn't be going into college without a basic understanding of PowerShell or even Bash for that matter. I mean, that's part of the issue.
Mike, as a recent college grad, I will say absolutely you are correct. Like when I went to high school, I had 2 years of computer science exposure. So I took a Java class, I believe my sophomore year, and then I took a web development course in my junior year of high school. By the time I came into college, the first semester of college was just basically review. Like kids were struggling with basic, like how do you write loops and loop logic and stuff like that. But for me, since I had exposure to it way before I even came to college, it was just rudimentary at that point.
I think that's a good point that you bring up. I think one of the major problems that most of these states have is that community college and high school is like two separate things. And in reality, I think that community college needs to be restructured from the ground up, and it should be connected to the high schools. And so that they could, instead of just going from high school to major university, they go in, they go through 12 and then post 12 and then more um, academia within the community college itself. It's all state funded, so why not actually leverage those resources that's there so that they get all of those necessary computer science academia credits? Because you jump from high school to that's a big step. That's not, you're talking about going from riding a bicycle to driving a dump truck with 21 gears. That's not easy.
Yeah, it's just like we use that example on those boot camps. I mean, you have to have some level of understanding before hopping into those boot camps because they're throwing this stuff at you at a fast pace. You need to have some type of background before you actually spend the money on those courses and hopping into it, and you end up being lost. But I definitely agree with this article. Um, at and one point that stuck out to me was when they were talking about the lack of teachers. Because that, I mean, most people that go through these programs, you know what I'm saying, they're not looking at coming back to teach. So that will be an issue later on, unless they have some push for, educators and they are willing to match. I would say they would have to match some of the pay you can make out here. I don't know how much professors make, uh,
That's
depending on what
tenure.
what's that, tenure.
Just tenure, yeah. So you won't make any money until like later on.
Okay, okay, I get what you're saying. Um, and yeah, I'm not 100% familiar with that whole tenure process. So I mean, I don't know. The money is out there, and it's not. It's I don't know if it's comparable, to going back to tenure or whatever. On the potential that you can make. So I don't know. I see that as an issue as well, just like what they said in the article.
Well, the way you fix that problem is that the people who are going to take these PhDs, who are going to,
Hmm.
who will sign up for these PhDs, make them sign an agreement that you have to, contribute X amount of time back to the university. You're not just going to get a free PhD ride, you
Hmm.
know, and then take off and go work for Lockheed Martin or something like that. It's not going to happen. Or Microsoft or Google. Not going to happen. You're going to have to contribute X amount of hours back to the back to where you started. So I think
It's
that
kind of like
yeah, but
no, I was just gonna say it's kind of like the people that go into like mental health, they have to do, or the medical field, you have to do a residency for, and a lot of times the school or they'll pipeline you to the actual companies that do the residencies. So that's all I was going to add. Go ahead.
I think that was complex trying to get.
Oh, sorry.
No, no, I'm just listening in right now. You're muted. I'll jump in when I get on the Wi-Fi at my house.
All right, man. Yeah, and so Judge Ziller says that because they do not want adult students mixing with minor students, liability issues. I think you might be missing my point. I think the 12th graders, because the community colleges are usually pretty empty unless somebody, unless there's something extravagant about going to that second community college. You're still having adults go there. I mean, they're mostly 18-year-olds anyways. They're coming out of senior year.
I mean, in my state, they have this thing called post-secondary education during school. So,
Yep.
like for performing students in their sophomore year or really high stutter students in their freshman year of high school, they can opt to go to the state university or go to a local um, community college. So they'll be college students, but they're actually be in high school. There's programs out here like that, but certain states have different different objectives when it comes to education.
Right.
like Alabama is not going to have STEM related education courses in their high school curriculum
Right.
versus a state like that Massachusetts. And it also depends on the area code of that school, sadly. So
Yep.
because of property taxes and stuff like that.
Yep.
I mean, when I was in college, I remember there was this kid who went to a private school, and we were up, and I decided to look up like his private school and their course catalog. Like, if you send your kids to these private schools, like the kind of math that they're doing is like comparable to what a junior college student is doing. So by the time like a kid that goes to a really nice private school ends up in college, they're pretty much at a junior level standing in terms of intellectual capacity. And that's where you really got to start thinking about, if you're going to send your kid somewhere, where do you want to plant that soil? Where do you want to plant that seed? You got to plant it where it's fertile.
Right. In Singapore, they're already teaching the kids at preschool level the basics of the building blocks of computer science, coding, for that matter. All right. Advance Judgezilla. All right. This is from a Scientific American. STEM education needs a course correction. That picture always makes me smile. For the past several years, I lived in a science evangelist, crisscrossing the country and preaching the gospel of importance of getting a STEM education. My work began with my TED Talk in 2012 when I exchanged the security of a lab bench for an assortment of unfamiliar podiums. After witnessing STEM education evolve over the past 8 years, however, I have come to believe that it requires a course correction. It needs to head in the direction of its core mission, which is now different from what most people think. STEM touches all parts of culture, or parts of our culture, which is why many policymakers will say our nation needs a skilled technical workforce, as the National Science Board claims in its January 2020 report, the state of U.S. science and engineering. But the function of a STEM education is much more than training people for great jobs. As the scholar and activist W.E.B. Du Bois wrote, the object of all true education is not to make men carpenters, it is to make carpenters men. All children need some form of STEM, whether they choose to pursue a career in it or not, so that they can be pilots and not just passengers in this technological age. A quality education in these all important technical fields nurtures the asking of questions, which will prepare future citizens to navigate societal shifts caused by the technologies that are created. When students are empowered to ask questions, they are able to be more than just cogs in a machine. For this reason, technical training today should not be solely in the business of making better coders, but of making better people who will be able to cultivate in the future. We've been saying that on here for the last 3 years now, that the Black community needs to follow this model. Critical thinking, which is a STEM virtue that is employed by investors to build technology, should also be applied to technologies that they build. Technology shapes society, and such analysis is imperative at all stages of design. When writing my book, The Alchemy of Us, I stumbled onto surprising ways that technology has molded us. I found that ordinary inventions such as the light bulb, the telegraph, and the computer altered our health, modified the English language, and transformed the way we think. Scientists and inventors don't commonly ponder such outcomes of their inventions. They use the principles of science, technology, engineering, and math to make things. But scientists, as well as society, must consider that what we make has consequences, intended and unintended. Those who study STEM are not trained with the skills to assess the impact of their innovation, but they should be. So they're talking about basically being cognizant of what your inventions are going to, what kind of impact your invention is going to have, some kind of ethics. It isn't their fault entirely. Students are doing what they are taught to do and follow the Silicon Valley mantra to seek forgiveness, not permission. The intrepidness will and already has bitten back, as evidenced by Facebook, the poster child of the information age, which has become a platform of misinformation. There are ramifications to what we build, and currently the consideration of these outcomes is often outsourced to the social sciences, law, and humanities long after Pandora's box has been opened. These considerations should occur at the ideation stage. As such, we must provide the practitioners of STEM some training in how their creations touch many facets of our lives, as well as a way to build a sensitivity to the social roles that technologies play. So basically, I'm not going to read this whole thing. Basically, they're just talking about having a state of ethics, a concern for how your ability to cultivate a next generation of STEM graduates should have two sides of the spectrum looked at. One is not just turning people into coders, and I agree with this 100%. There needs to be more innovation coming out of this, not just people who can just master Python or C++. And on the other side, there has to be an ethics portion. But I think ethics should be driven by a council within any government, local, state, and federal. That there should be some form of like a what do you call that? Like basically when you want to run scientific experiments, there's a from the Nuremberg trial in Germany. They basically have a board of practitioners that look at all this type of stuff that you're doing for pharmaceutical drugs and things of that nature. You need the same thing when it comes to AI and anything tech driven. There should be a council that looks at the ethics behind this and decides whether or not this can go forward or not. And so the people who are going to be the next STEM graduates or the next STEM enrollees, they have a better understanding of what they're getting themselves into. They can't just create weapons of mass destruction through lines of code.
Right. No, it's definitely, there's something still really needs to happen with that way, as far as that goes. Because again, it's of the last 15 years, right? Legislation has been just way too slow, way too far behind, right? Because no offense to the older generation, they just don't know what they don't know. And they haven't made the push forward to put those people who are in the know, who are at least in the pipeline to know, to facilitate something of that nature, for a some form of reigning force or ethical force to make sure that things stay within the boundaries of reasonable benefits to society. But then again, and it's a hard. And look, I'm not saying it's easy. I'm not saying it's easy. It's a hard nut to crack, because right, especially when we live in a time and an age in which cultural relativism, postmodernism, and its intersections with uh, flexible social and societal mores and ethics. It's this is a hard thing. The other thing I just wanted to clear up real quick is, no, what I was saying is having, because a lot of these students are going to be, when they graduate high school, they're going to be 18 years old. But the majority of the students at the community college level are adult level students, and so that they don't want to, this hybridized program has to go with the high school students that are interested in the programs going to the college, but the college can't be there are a lot of liability issues that way.
Yep.
It, same. So and they've had those programs. They've had those programs for like 20 years. It's just very few, for whatever reason, very few students take advantage of them. I mean, because high school is all about high school, right? So.
Oh, but high school has to be reorganized.
Oh, I look. I think it needs to be reorganized. I still don't understand why we're on the agrarian calendar system. And I was arguing this when I was in high school.
Mhm.
Like, you lose so much time under the agrarian calendar system. It's not even funny. Especially for those who are, for those who are under resourced and impoverished, right? You lose 6 months of every educational year being on the agrarian calendar schedule. 6 months, right? Of 12 years worth of education. That is 6 years of education. That is a master's degree.
Yeah.
Right? Because after post-secondary education, 6 years is a master's degree.
Mm-hmm.
And look, the rest of the people in the world aren't doing that.
Electrical engineering has not changed in over 150 years. Why are we still using that method for teaching in a society that posts information at the speed of light?
Yeah.
There's something wrong with this sort of the people who are in charge, and they have to be looking at this, that a child in Africa who has never seen any sort of electronic can pick up an iPad and learn it in less than 4 hours. And then you have people here, who go through this long process of education where they get to the end and then they learn algebra or calculus, and then they don't use it later, and then they're forced to relearn it later. It's a broken process. It doesn't seem to really keep pace with modern society development. Societal.
Well, and I think part of it, here's the thing. Part of it is the American people themselves.
Mm-hmm.
Part of the problem is the American people themselves, right? Because, okay, I'm trying to not sound eugenist, but there are people who are operating at max capacity, just making sure that they spell their name correctly.
Mm-hmm.
You are not going to teach these people to code.
Right.
We still need lower level jobs to be filled, but those people in the lower level jobs need to also be treated like they are not, need to also be treated and like they're not inferior or second class.
Mm-hmm.
You see what I mean?
Yeah.
And which is a hard thing to do in a capitalist economy because, right? Because your value, for lack of a better word, is based upon the skill sets that you produce and their value in society.
Right.
So it's a very difficult balance to watch. And like I said, none of this stuff is easy, but these things, these that's why these ideas need to be examined, because they're not easy and because they're so interconnected and complicated and nebulous.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So.
Yeah. Maybe charter schools are supposed to fix this type of stuff. I don't know. It's just one of those things, for Black people, they're always behind the 8 ball because their schools are underfunded and under-resourced. Most of the computers are hand-me-down and things of that nature from different organizations. Books are not plentiful. And all of it just needs to be redeveloped from the ground up because it's not actually helping, it's actually hurting them. And you have people who want to maintain the system for what it is because they get money off of the enrollment of the students. And so
right, the wrong things have been incentivized and being taken advantage of.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Right, there's no incentive if you're getting paid, right. The old saying for construction is right that pretty much everybody knows who's been involved in construction is every day you're working yourself out of a job, which is why you have to have the next job lined up, right? So, but unfortunately, the attitude for people who are paid to work on these problems, they tend to look at it as, well, if I solve this problem, then what am I going to do next? How am I going to get money next, right? So there's really no real true incentive to solve the problem. So,
Timo in the chat asks, what low-level jobs are you referring to?
well, I'm saying lower level jobs that do not require the intellectual flexibility that higher level jobs. I mean, it's right. We understand that janitorial positions are valuable, but they don't require the same. They don't require the same intellectual flexibility that an engineer's position has.
Hmm.
It's not saying that there's no value in the job. It's just saying that the intellectual expenditure for pursuing the completion of this work isn't as rigorous.
Mhm.
You know,
Mhm.
I mean, that's just one simple example, but I think we understand that. I mean, I think it's not hard to conceptualize that. Certain things are harder to think and process and perform than others.
No,
Yeah, I
I
think.
100% agree with you, Judge Zilla.
Mhm.
Yeah.
That's why again, it's one of the things that pushes me more in the anarcho bent, but it makes me understand some of the positions with other, because but I can't go with the other ones that are more social, because right, you're equating everybody's efforts. Look, I'm sorry, man, that neurosurgeon that spent 40 years receiving education, he made a lot of sacrifices to be able to eat, and he deserves to be compensated, because he that neurosurgeon is less than 1,000th of a 1,000th of a percent of population who can perform that job. You know, you have to value these things. You have to put appropriate value to things, but you also don't have to denigrate those who perform those jobs that aren't, you know, intellectually rigorous.
Mhm. All right, next item on the docket from Disrupt Africa. Meet the African tech startups teaching kids to code. Wasn't we just talking about that? The jobs of the future are in coding and engineering, but there exists a substantial skills gap in Africa. A host of startups, however, have developed solutions that are teaching children vital skills from an early age. According to code.org, 71% of all new STEM jobs are in computing, yet only 8% of STEM graduates are in computer science. Meanwhile, it is predicted that over the next 2 decades, machine learning, robots, and automation will replace 47% of current jobs. These figures present major challenges, which some African startups are looking to tackle by engaging people from their earliest years. Nathan Damtu, founder and chief executive officer of Ethiopian ed startup B-Blocking, says it is vital children learn skills that will be pivotal for their future success at an early age. Everything we interact with involves some kind of technology in it. We are living in a technological society, and it is only going to grow in the future. It is becoming more and more important to gain skills in coding nowadays, especially for young kids, he told Disrupt Africa. As technology continues to move to the forefront of in our society, jobs requiring basic computational skills are soaring. Just knowing the basics of coding should give kids a set of skills that will be useful in almost every industry and give them a huge advantage over those who don't. For the 2018, B Blocking has developed a gamified learn to code app for children that has already been downloaded thousands of times since its launch in June of last year. Aimed at kids aged between 7 and 14, it presents code concepts and graphical puzzle style programming blocks. Dam2 said at first glance, it may seem teaching your young kids to code is impossible, much like teaching them a new language. Yet, as with a new language, it is best to start when a child's mind is still forming. There are wider benefits too. Learning coding at a young age helps them build critical life skills like creativity, problem solving, and perseverance. When they code, kids learn through experimentation, and it strengthens their brains. allowing them to find creative solutions to problems set them to. It also develops their persistence and perseverance. As they code, they learn that it's okay to fail and improve. There's no better way to build perseverance than working through challenges like debugging coding or debugging code. It makes kids better thinkers and communicators as well. B-blocking makes learning these skills fun through gamification, which Dam2 believes is the way to go. The aspect of games that makes them addictive and fun can be combined with learning, resulting in an increase in engagement, better retention, and smoother process of understanding a new concept, he said. Other startups are focusing on combination of software and hardware. In South Africa, the developers of interactive engineering console, C-Blocks, are also now producing C-Blocks circuit builder kits, which come with fun and easy explainer videos to help users learn electronic and electrical technology skills. Teachers have told us that learners find building circuits difficult because they have to interpret the circuit diagram and then translate that to actual components which look nothing like this symbols, said founder John Clark. They have been they then have to take the actual components and build the circuit on a special prototype board called a breadboard, which is a whole other challenge in itself. C-Blocks removes this barrier by integrating the abstract symbols and the actual circuit boards into one easy-to-use circuit builder kit. That's how I was taught. I was taught the same way, and I learned that 11? I was already soldering by 11. Most countries lag behind in the training of engineers and technically skilled people. C-Blocks offers a technological solution. It is uniquely positioned to benefit learners in Africa where there is a dire skills shortage and a lack of technical training capacity. So I'm gonna read this whole thing. Yeah, I Disrupt Africa was actually there when I was in Rwanda. So I met the not the CEO, but the founder of Disrupt Africa over there. And we, this discussion did come up. And the thing is, they're cultivating their kids at a very, very young age over there on the continent. That's a lot of focus being put behind that. And so I wish that more Black people actually thought this way, instead of just actually, sending them to go play football or fucking basketball. They should be actually doing this. Over there, sports is not really a focus at all. The idea of a basketball court being in somebody's neighborhood is unheard of.
Well, because logically it doesn't make sense, right?
Yeah.
The math doesn't work out.
Mm-hmm.
It's easier to be. It's easy. Look, it's easier to follow the laid out plane, the laid out path when you look at the 4 quarters of a lifespan, right?
Mm-hmm.
When you look at the 4 quarters of a lifespan, what are the odds that you're going to be a professional athlete, and what are the odds that you're going to be an engineer if you follow the path that's already laid out?
Yeah.
But the other thing I was thinking about as you were reading this is the application of Skinner blocks, right? So we're talking about ethics earlier. So,
Mm-hmm.
so the application of Skinner box manipulation, right, and coinciding that with educational material. Are you familiar with Skinner box manipulation?
I heard of it.
It's basically right. It comes into a bad field. It comes into a bad field of psychological programming and psychological. You might even say not abuse, but manipulation in a negative sense, right? It's when they use it for games when the free to play games on apps, or when they use it for casino games, right? So that's a negative connotation there. There's an abusive connotation there. But is it abusive if what you're using it for is to get people more interested in those things that will benefit their lives? You see what I'm saying?
Right.
If so if you have that's it's one of the things that I'd been thinking of as well, is like, if Department of Education, Department of Defense was really like, that would be something that they should be really getting on, or even private sector, is crossing those two, Skinner box manipulation and education, and programming and apps that they can put out to the general public, or utilize through their already foundational education system, that they already have everything in place, the entire infrastructure to get these kids learned up faster, and look, for lack of a better terminology, addicted to learning.
Right.
Addicted to doing their homework, addicting to progressing that educational path.
Yeah, that was one of the conversations we had last week here locally for our chapter. Cultivating a new culture of continuous learning in the Black community. How do you push something? How do you push an initiative like that when there's so much pushback against something called the educated lane? It's a really fine line that Black people seem to walk. And I don't know if you've ever read the book by Joseph C. Phillips called "He Talks Like a White Boy."
Yeah. Well, I did read the entire book. No, I didn't. But I've read what do you call it? Abridged.
Yeah. Yeah. So in Joseph C. Phillips' book, in the first chapter, he talks about the cool factor that Black people always try, for Black men, that they're always trying to reach this cool factor. That's very, very important in the identity of a Black male, and especially when you're talking about in the formation stages, that the cool factor is more important than the actual learning process, is what he's referring to. And you see that being reverberated even in places like the manosphere, though people say that the manosphere shouldn't reflect the Black community as a whole, but it's a microcosm. You see the cool factor is way more important than the actual the cultivation of meritocracy and achievement. And so Black males get left behind because nobody's telling them that, hey, you can do a lot more than jump really high and catch that ball.
Yeah, I definitely agree with what you're saying, Mike.
Can you hear me?
That's
We can hear you, Nicole.
Oh yeah. I was just gonna say real quick. You dead on the. Go ahead. Who was it?
Josh is here.
Who's talking?
Josh.
No, you can go
Josh,
ahead, man. We supposed to talk on the phone after this anyway, right?
Yeah.
But go ahead, man. Go ahead.
Go wrap. I got mad tied up, but anyway, all right. That's great points that are being made, but yeah, one of the things that we see, like I said, over at Thurgood Marshall High, magnet school, and of course they talk about certainly in the children, in the Harlem Children's Zone and all that, where people are getting wonderful educations. You have to make education cool, and you have to make a shirt and a tie and dress slacks and shoes cool. You have these are things that we can actually change, and when people start to lay a standard down and say, this is how you have to come in, and this is how things are going to have to work, and let's really talk about, getting right with our education and getting right with how we look, and first getting our appearance straight first, and then let's now, get into the learning aspect about it also. All that now becomes cool. It becomes cool to become good in math. It becomes cool to be able to speak well. It becomes cool to learn to learn your history. It becomes cool to kind of learn other languages and stuff. You can actually make this cool. You can make this cool.
But we shouldn't have to do that, though.
The bottom line is, but we're gonna have to. So that's where we're at.
Not necessarily, bro. Not necessarily, because the Asians aren't doing that. The Asians aren't doing that.
Well, hold on a second. The Asians and so forth, and how their culture comes up with the tiger moms and everything else like that they have, and they're coming over here, with that immigrant mentality of, listen, man, you've got 1,001 opportunities here where you didn't have it over there in China or wherever you came from. So, you got no choice but to come off. All right. Here, our socialization and so forth, It's been different, and I'm not making any excuses for it,
Mhm.
because there is no excuse to a large extent for how we see it. But we have to deal with what's really going on the ground. What is the reality,
Well,
as to what we would like to see, as to what the reality is. And when we look at what the reality is, and now, okay, this is what the reality is. Now, how do we? What are our solutions for it? How do we now
right.
deal with it? And then you have to come in now with a different type of program to counteract some of that.
No, and I'm with
And
you.
we
I'm
know,
with
and
you
we know
there.
how to do that. And I was going to say, we know actually how to do that. Okay, but it's not taken around enterprise wide, because in our society and the culture, in our dysfunctional community, in a lot of ways, this is not being pushed. It's not being pushed in some of our educational institutions, which, in my view, is where you can actually begin to counteract a lot of that.
But yeah, you're right. I'm sorry.
You know what I'm saying? I mean, you can actually begin to counteract a lot of that in our educational institutions from the time they hit the first grade. So we can do it. We know how to do it, but we're not. And there's a whole nother set of questions and answers to be dealt with that. But I'll just put that out there for right now. Yes, the Asians come in here, and let's just put it like this. And we keep talking about the Africans, right? The Africans come over. Many come here to the United States, Nigeria, Ghana, Uganda, and so forth. They come here with the same kind of immigrant mentality like you have from the Chinese and others. And many of them are doing even better than them who are coming over from there. They don't have those issues either. So we have to look at some of these things are endemic upon us, and we have to take the solutions that we have and apply them enterprise-wide to solve some of these issues. We have the solutions. We just haven't applied it at the broad-based level that we need to do that. And that's a political and economic type of a deal as well. But and a social idea. But we do have the answers to this. Is what I would say. All right, go ahead, guys.
No, Josh was trying to break in there.
Yeah. Go
Oh no,
ahead. Keep it technical.
no, you good.
Okay.
Go ahead, brother.
Go ahead, Judge Zilla.
Well, and again, it's like I said, I do believe that we know how to. I agree with Nicole that we know how to solve some of these issues with the cachet associated with being educated, with being with having a comprehensive set of skills and understanding and expressing yourself in English. That type of situation. Um, but much like how the rest of the overarching American culture, immigrant and otherwise, it's got to start in the households, right? It has to start within the households. If it's not started within the households, if it's not nurtured, right? If you keep taking this plant home with you to home with you from school to a bad to a house where all they're doing is not good stuff,
Unstable environments.
This plant is not going to thrive. And likewise, if you have good stuff going on at the house and you take it to schools that aren't doing the proper methodologies, you have to have both of those environments for this to be successful. And that requires that requires, in my estimate at least, to have both. Right? You can't make teachers get parents on accord, but parents can make teachers get on accord.
Yeah.
Yeah, I 100% agree with both of y'all statements or whatever. That's what I was gonna bring in. We gotta change the mindset of the environment that these kids grow up into before they even get to the school. Because I mean, I ain't gonna lie, I fell for it. You know what I'm saying? Like,
But you homeschool your kids, right?
what's that?
You homeschool your kids.
Well, no, I'm talking about for me, like my parents, I mean, and where I went to school and stuff. I mean, my environment was decent, you know what I'm saying? But I was around a lot of people though in my neighborhood that wasn't good influences, and that's my fault for falling for it. But I mean, it's a lot of kids out there don't have anybody or any direction outside of these schools before they even come, where they learn a whole bunch of other stuff that is not conducive to to actually being productive. You know what I'm saying? So, I mean, I agree with both of what you guys said, though. That's all I wanted to state.
Yeah, I also like to say, it's you have to have parents. You have the nexus between the success of your kids is a agreement between your teachers and your parents to to move your kids in the right direction. You have to have them agree. It's just like in the children's zone. Parents have to come. Single mom or single mom or baby daddy or whatever. I don't care what the situation is. They both got to be there. If you're gonna have that kid in that situation, you have to show up to these meetings. You have to be there. You have to be a participant in your kid's educational experience. You have to. There's no way your kids can get right. Their minds can't get right without you both being there. That's what's showing a lot of success. Showing a lot of success there. These parents are ultimately having to agree. So if this kid even goes to his mother's house or goes to his father's, they understand what the deal is. They understand exactly what's going on, but they have to be there. I don't care if your parents get along. Man, nah, man, y'all got to be here because if you're not, then this kid ain't gonna be up in there for too long. That's just how it is. So you have to bring them around so the school can make demands to make sure that the parents are responsive. And once the parents become responsive, then the parents can put certain pressures on the educational system as well. The educational system could put demands on them, and boom, and it works. It works. It works. We're doing it. We are doing it. We are doing it.
Hear me out a little bit. I just was just kind of running a thought experiment while you were talking there. Now going, I was listening to you, but it just kind of popped into my head that way. The thought process of if you could connect the nexus to the monetization of a child's educational advancement to the parent, right? There's no other. There's no larger motivator that I've found in America than money.
The parents already told. Listen, your kid, if they go and finish up and get out, not only get out of high school, but finish up, at least get into the degree program out of school, they're going to make $1 million, more in their lifetime than one who is not. This is proven. This is proven to be true. And if you're going science and technology, it's going to be quite a bit more than that. That's where it is. These people understand that walking in the door. This is told to them. They understand this. So the understanding of your child's education to them having a better life with respect to having a better job and a better opportunity to do well is not lost on them. That's why they're there. And that's why these people are making this commitment, because this is to move them ahead. And
but for many, it's too delayed. So what I'm saying is,
well, you say it's too delayed. What's too delayed?
No. Those that understand that concept and that grasp that concept already do that concept, right? But we know that there is a significant portion of the population that, quite frankly, though they can intellectually rationalize that concept, they are not willing to put in the resources or the labor into achieving that goal or that goal for their children.
I in some respects, I used to believe that. I kind of don't now. And the only reason why I say that is because I believe, and this is what I've seen, you give the real proper opportunities to people, or the proper opportunities are applied, or excuse me, are availed. Really good opportunities, good educational opportunities are availed. African Americans classically have absolutely gone in that direction. Our school systems and so forth that are so bad that we've lost faith, and where this derelict community of, you gotta be cool, you talk white, and this, that, not have working, all that shit has become cool because there's never been a real strong effort to make you that well educated. I was reading some books and some information actually on the Old South and your educational experiences. Actually, that's out of a book, White Trash, but it was kind of interesting. That came up across the South, and we're talking about after slavery. and well up into the 21st century, for a period of about 75 years, you had across the South only 64 secondary or high schools for Black education. 64 across the South. And we're not talking about a state, across the South.
Right.
So this is an astounding factor that, but then again, when I sit down and I would listen to my old relatives who would sit down and say they had to walk 15 and 20 miles to school and these kind of things, it started to make a lot more sense. So you started to see how in this country, once you were no longer a slave, they did not want to put any real money or any dollars or any kind of reconstitution of your people with respect to getting educated. They didn't want to put that there. 64 schools in the South where you had, around 4 million, close to 4.5 million Black people in that area. Across the South, and we're talking about, from Florida, Panhandle all the way across over into going into literally almost into New Mexico, and all states in between, and as far north as Maryland. So the Mason-Dixon line, this is astounding. Most of us don't understand this. Most of us don't have this information. We don't know. But when you start talking to your old relatives and people who have grown up in America and are ADOS, and especially people my age, you talk to grandparents, great grands, and so forth. I walked 20 miles to school. I walked 15 miles to school. Yeah, schools weren't that available. So therefore, we want education as much available. Now the education that we do have in the public schools or in areas that are, dilapidated. You don't have a strong tax base, and a lot of things that have gone on that have played into that. So that's but every time we had the opportunity to get education or have it availed to us in an area, we've taken advantage of it. So that's why I say we have the answers to this. It's just so much of it has to do with community development and really developing your community and all that goes about that. Those are your institutions and your educational and your economic institutions, so forth, have to be shored up. That's a big part of the problem. We can get into that conversation more, but I'm just saying that our institutions have not been developed. And so much of the pathology or the pathological circumstance that we see with respect to young Black people not being well educated and getting caught up into this mindset of, being ignorant in school is been quite frankly been programmed into you to be this way. And you can deprogram that. This is what I'm saying. That can be deprogrammed a lot faster and quicker than you might think. A lot of that is going to be dependent upon us. And I'll just leave it at that. Hopefully you guys understand what I'm saying. Go ahead. Go ahead, Mike.
No, I thought Judge Zill was going to go first.
No, it's
I mean, Judge Zill, you're from the South, right?
Southwest.
Okay.
I don't disagree. That's what I'm saying. Is as I don't disagree to the points that to Nego. I don't disagree with a single point that Nego brings up. The only thing that it's not I agree 100% with what he said, but it's what's past that. You know what I mean? It's so that foundational understanding, 100% in agreement. It's what we build upon past that foundation is where I run into complications.
Well, that's where the biggest part of our problem has been. That's where our problem has been. That's what we have not been very successful in the last 75 years of really solving the way that we need. And there've been a lot of reasons for that. A lot of reasons. I don't call them excuses because we shouldn't have any excuses. But we should be better at educating our kids and getting them to a certain level. There has been very little money put forward throughout history in this country to educate Black people.
See,
Very
like I said, I maybe I operate in a wider set of grayscale for morals and ethics. I see nothing wrong with tricking a horse to drink water.
I'm following your point, and I agree.
This is, you know, if you're not going to drink, if you're not going to drink the water of your own volition, well, okay, let's see how we can get this done.
Yeah, but we have to. But I see also from a standpoint that we have to develop our level of high level of Black education. I really believe in that more so now than ever before. Very interesting situation. I have a good friend of mine. He has twins, a boy and a girl, born at the same time. But yet they're in the preschool right now, and they're in there with the Beckies teaching them, if you will. And a little boy, he's a little brother, curly head little kid, real cute. But he's a baby. He's about 2.5 years old. And they're in there, and they're playing around. He's a little aggressive, so he's bitten a couple of kids once or twice. Now, other kids are doing it, but now all of a sudden they want to bring in these shrinkers and evaluate this child and doing all this. The daughter's fine, but the little dark boy is here, mind you now, 2 years old, not 3 years old yet. He's a problem. What he's doing? He's in there with the other little grays and with their little gray kids and him and Becky at the head of the table, and they're already trying to label him. And I told him, I said, Pat, get them the fuck out of there. Get them out of there. Now, get them out of there. Because what's going to happen as time goes on, it's serious as you may think, they'll start putting them in front of these shrinkers and all these other people that are different, and they'll give him a complex, real subtle like. He'll be less successful in his performance because he's the enemy. He's the problem. He's the bogeyman. They already castigated him at 2.5 years old. It's imperative that we develop our own levels of education and have our own people to go to develop our kids and teach them well. Because you're putting them in front of this system, it's dangerous. It's dangerous. And I don't believe it's within your interest. I've come to that conclusion. And I'm not wrong.
No, I think there should be an exchange program every summer. We send those Black kids over to the continent, and they come back, man, rejuvenated. They learn over there, build the same institution over there. And
I would thoroughly agree with that as well.
Mm-hmm.
But get your Black children, especially your boys, in front of Becky, and that destructive system that they're putting you in for your educational purposes as well. I don't think it's designed for us to do well. And it's against you. It's against me. I see it already. I see it with my grandson. That's why I constantly work with him in his math classes. He started having problems in math because he had Becky in front of him, fucking with him. And I was like, I know what this is. I ran into this before. I know what this is. I'm sorry, just to bring it down like that, but don't put your kids in front of them. I am a firm believer in that now. And that's why I understand why some of these more intelligent Black people who know how to educate their kids, if they don't have a Black school around them, well, that's very good. They're doing it themselves. And then I say, you're damn right. Educate them yourself if you can. Instead of putting them into these institutions, they'll do better. Around these people, a 2.5-year-old kid, they getting ready to label them. Shit, I got underwear older than that, and they're getting ready to label this kid as a fucking problem.
You might want to change your underwear there, bro. All right, this one's from T-Hunter.com. Cargo e-bike. Carl, you gotta mute up. All right. Cargo e-bikes will eat SUVs. Forget drones and flying cars. This is the future of deliveries, whether goods or kids. 100 years ago, cargo bikes were the standard vehicle for many trades and deliveries. We have even shown a cargo bike cat litter exchange service, a business idea that might work well today. According to the World Bank, they are having a renaissance of gaining recognition as a cleaner, safer, and more efficient mode of urban freight delivery and passenger transport. As a human-powered and fuel-free vehicle, this form of active transport could bring even more benefits to our cities than other disruptive technologies. Coincidentally, while I was researching this post, the Twitter account of the all-powerful bicycle lobby invited readers to submit photos of people moving goods by bike. Some are electric, and it seems that they are already taken over. So this is a picture of one, although it's not as clean as I would like it. I guess it does the job. Give them a little boost from an electric motor like John Lloyd's here in the better batteries that we have now, and you have another story altogether. E-bikes may soon start to invade the niche currently occupied by automobiles thanks to their convenience, utility, and relatively low cost. Even electric cargo bikes, though more expensive at about $8,000, the standard e-bikes are much cheaper than most cars. And maybe just as useful for running most errands. According to the one survey, 28% of e-bike buyers bought the e-bike as substitute for a car, not as an upgrade to a bike. In fact, last year in Germany, electric cargo bikes outsold electric cars 39,000 to 32,000. There are many reasons, including the fact that they are smaller and don't clog up the streets and don't pollute. But they also make sense in this new world of online shopping and instant gratification, according to the World Bank. Research commissioned by the European Union concludes that 25% of all goods and 50% of all light deliveries in urban settings could be serviced by cargo bikes. Around the world, customers of online retailers are increasingly purchasing everything from groceries to furniture. The expectation of immediacy, especially in urban centers, has led to massive traffic increases on city streets. 87% of millennials prefer to conduct business with socially and environmentally conscientious companies. In that context, informing your customers that their package has arrived using a sustainable and environmentally friendly means of transport could become a significant commercial advantage. Electrification of cargo bikes makes it a whole new world, letting more people carry more stuff greater distances. According to the owner of an e-bike store in London, quoted in the Financial Times, it makes it much easier. Whereas before they were manual and you had to have a really big really big chap riding them, you now have electric cargo bikes. Delivery companies are switching from diesel trucks to cargo e-bikes. The CEO of Mango, a delivery company, tells the Financial Times that they will gradually supplement the diesel vans that perform many of the company's drops and provides a more efficient, greener service. The Urban Arrow cargo bike used by Mango is capable of moving up to 250 kilograms of goods at a time, but it has only 2 wheels, and so slips easily past traffic jams and down cycle tracks, according to Mr. Levon Harris. I think the future would be pedal power rather than drones or driverless cars. We noted a few years ago that the cargo bike is the new family car, but the cargo e-bike really opens up the market. It becomes the family SUV. This is interesting. What just happened? Anyways,
Yeah, no, you're starting to see those. You started seeing those around here in Phoenix. I want to say 3 to 5 years ago, but it seems like this is one of those situations where the future here is a solution that India, Asia, India, India, Asia, Southeast Asia have been using for
Mhm.
20 odd years, right?
Mhm.
And so I'm sure that there are companies that have been refining this model for, just like you're showing these kind of prototypical bicycle setup, cargo bike setups. I, I have to understand. I have to believe. Matter of fact, I know because I've been to India, I've been to Singapore, and I've seen these. And I saw these things well before this article was written.
Yeah, but in America, at least in the West, I should say the West, um, the culture is vastly different. Everybody has to have a big Chevy Suburban or F-150 pickup. They got to have it, even if they're not going off road or they're not putting anything in the bed. They just got to have it, and that's what's destroying the culture is this sort of desire to have everything massively big and just have these big vehicles that don't do much. And
Are 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 you California or Texas?
me?
Yeah,
No, Massachusetts.
Massachusetts. My bad. My apologies.
Yeah, that's fine.
But yeah, here in Phoenix, yeah, it's. I mean, I so in Phoenix is a spread out city. You have to have a car,
Mhm.
but you have to have a car because everybody's all like family members and everything is all spread out. Plus your occupation is usually well away from where you're living.
Mhm.
So your so that's a thing. But when you do most of your daily shopping or weekly shopping, that usually is within a 3 to 5 mile radius, right?
Mhm.
Of your living area.
Right.
So, effectively, how much time are you losing by using a vehicle versus by using something that could facilitate it like this that's pedal powered or electric powered?
Well, what I've argued last year to city council was that there needs to be an initiative for an electric vehicle tax credit, for those people in that area. Because if you're going to give it for Tesla, why not do it for the electric bike too? I don't
Well, I
understand.
I I think I don't think it's just Tesla. I think it's for all of them. But Tesla is expiring because they got past what 500,000.
Yeah, but
But
Tesla is the premier,
yeah,
right? So I'm just saying, from Tesla in particular, Black people are not buying Teslas like that, right? It's very few
no,
Black people that are buying Teslas. So for me, I'm looking at this and I'm saying it's environmentally friendly and it's electric too. It's an electric vehicle. How do we transfer, the tax credits for that as well?
hmm
I mean, we know they own it. The difference here is that the people who lease and buy Teslas, they get the tax credit regardless if they lease it or they buy it. In reality, it should only be if they buy it, not if they lease it.
right,
And because they don't actually own it, it's the actual custodian of the company that you're leasing it from actually owns it, so they should get the credit. But what
right,
what has been happening is a lot of tax fraud has been going on in that area. A lot of white people committing tax fraud, getting these sort of vehicles through leasing and then getting the big tax credit at the end, and then skating off. But it's not strongly enforced. But that money could have gone to an electric bike, cargo bike, in that, in a low income area, could have drove incentive to actually own it and be an owner operator of their own vehicle. This is a litany of things that comes out of this that, these politicians, man, they don't actually look deeper into this type of stuff, man, to put pressure on an initiative.
well, yeah, because I remember people around my neighborhood back when I was, and again, this is more than 25 years ago when I was a kid. But I don't know if this was around you where you were growing up, but people putting leaf blower and gas and lawnmower engines on bicycles
Oh yeah.
and attaching the back sprocket to them and the chain, and right, that's how they would roll.
Mm-hmm.
you know, and like I said, it's not like you were going to pick up any women or anything off of it, but it did its job because hey, this is what I need to get me from where I'm at to where I need to be in a reasonable amount of time and without being drenched in sweat,
Yeah,
Yeah, we were doing that. We were doing it in my area. Yeah, we did that. Yeah, we were doing that on Schwinn 10 speeds.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes, we were.
Now the problem would come when that chain would break because it's not tested to be run at that stress level. But yeah,
chain would snap. It would snap after a while. It would snap.
But this is not. Here's the thing: this is not a difficult engineering solution, right? There's for what they're talking about. Number one, like I said, I think the solutions are definitely already available out on the market. They may not be in the American market or the Canadian market, but I definitely know that they are out there 100%. Because if you can afford to do it in the Philippines, you can afford to do it anywhere.
Yeah.
So, we know that.
Yeah.
You're in Phoenix?
I'm in Phoenix, yes.
Yeah. A very good friend of mine. He's in Tempe. He's around there. He's in
nice
Tempe.
Place to be. It's fun.
Yeah.
I think it's the auto manufacturers, man, who are involved in it, as well as the oil companies who don't want these sort of alternatives on the road. They'll do whatever they can to sabotage it. Sabotage any sort of legislature, to have these things on the road. So,
well, you see what they're doing with right. You see, you if you follow the trail back to where these complaints are coming from, it's pretty evident. But these complaints about the public electronic scooters.
Yeah, the e-scooters.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, they are bringing up some concerns, but are the concerns that they bring up as meaningful and impactful as they are bringing up?
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Oh man, they're all over the place. Yeah, but what's the purpose that they're serving? So who are the people complaining? Oh, let's look. Oh, seems like that's a cab company. Oh, seems like that's a car company. Oh, seems like that's a dealership. Oh, you know what I mean?
Yeah, and they'll complain about the look, because you're leaving them on the streets and stuff like that. Not in my backyard, basically, sort of deal. So
yeah.
All right, this one is from electric.co. U.S. Army tested all-terrain electric scooter for tactical use. Speaking of e-scooters that Judge Zilla brought up. They can afford this, though. Imagine that, a scooter Humvee.
I'd like to ride that more than I'd like to one of those what are they called?
Bird scooters?
What's that?
Bird scooter?
No, those the Segways.
Oh, yeah.
That seems like a very much more fun version of the Segway.
Yeah, this is not bulletproof either. So, somebody's taking pot shots at you, you're fucking screwed.
Well, that's I want to do it in an urban environment that is not 223 friendly.
Yeah. Maybe the run flats on the tires, but not your back. Yeah. All right. Let's bring this out. The popularity of electric scooters is beginning to permeate into ever more interesting areas of transportation. The latest development has seen the U.S. Army testing out a unique four-wheeled electric scooter known as the Easy Raider. The tests are scheduled to begin soon at the annual Army Expeditionary Warriors Experiments taking place in Fort Benning, Georgia. The U.S. Army uses the AEWE to conduct a series of war games and mock battles designed to give soldiers the opportunity to test out new and experimental equipment. While the usual suspects such as weapons and robotics will be among the dozens of new devices tested in the field, this year sees an interesting entrant in the mobility category, the Easy Raider four-wheel scooter. The Easy Raider is unique in the electric mobility space, combining the riding position of a jet ski with the stability of an ATV. It features patent pending long travel suspension that allows each wheel to move independently, both vertically and horizontally. The device's tall handlebars provides extra stability, while its off-road tires offer traction in varied terrain. The electric drive allows it to operate much quieter than gas-powered ATVs, which can be a significant advantage for tactical situations. The Easy Raider is available in a large number of variations, with power ranging from 2.4 kilowatts up to 18 kilowatts and battery capacity ranging from 1.7 to 3 kilowatts per hour. Options are available for either rear-wheel drive or all-wheel drive.
It's interesting. Look, I like how they're presenting it, but yeah, you do know what that really is, though, right?
You go ahead.
This is a killer drone. This
Why?
is a land-based killer drone.
Why do you say that?
Because just for the exact reasons that you said earlier.
Which is?
No armor. It's not meant to be manned. It's meant to be autonomous.
I think to a certain extent. I mean, it's a scooter phone.
This is a land-based mobile weapons platform. Autonomous. I'm just telling you. I see what I see. I mean, it's just this is a scary way of telling you what this thing is going to be able to do when you don't have that guy behind it. The speeds that matter of fact, Elon Musk, right? Elon Musk said about 2 years ago in an interview, right? The scary thing is that you will make these autonomous drones or soldiers or whatever, mechanical whatever, and they'll move faster than you can track with a strobe light. You won't be, so this is. I mean, just think of I'm just saying. Just think about all the drones that they have out there that are land based, the bomb disposal drones, and yada yada yada, and look at how fast. Look at the maneuverability and the speed of this thing, and that's because it has some ineffectual bipedal equilibrium challenged thing on the back of it. You know what I'm saying? You put a gyroscope on this thing. You put a gyroscope, a sophisticated gyroscope on this thing. You put a bolted down weapons platform on this thing. You also have it embedded. You also have it programmed embedded with tracking and automatic tracking and aiming software.
Well, the thing is, it would have to be a secure device, because what's happening with unmanned aerial drones is that they're being hijacked by enemies, right, or adversaries. Iran had captured one, Russians had captured one, and the Chinese had captured one. Over 10 years. So you get a bunch of these on the battlefield, and then the adversary hacks into it. Or either they put a denial of service attack against it, or they hijack it and then turn the same vehicle against the adversary itself. U.S. Army, and the vehicle starts shooting at the special forces, and you're screwed. It's so easy to pick up and hijack. It would have to be substantially heavier than what it is now, in order to avoid any sort of obstacles. Such as IEDs and stuff like that. But I get your point, though, that something like this, you drop 100 of these out of a back of a C-130 or something like that. Yeah, you can do a lot of damage with that. But you always think it's something violent.
I am not. I'm not a conspiracy guy. I'm just telling you what I see. Like I said, I am not the conspiracy guy.
It does hold 440 pounds, though. So,
well, that means I can ride it at least still. So, look, I'm down 30. I'm down 35 pounds. I'm good. I'm making the progress.
Oh, since our last Black Fitness talk?
Yes. Down 37 and a half pounds, but hey, you know.
There's a couple of notches in your belt.
Belts, I had to change pants. I had to change pants. It was, you're laughing.
No, it's hilarious because I thought you wore suspenders.
No, I wasn't quite there. I wasn't quite there. I was almost there. Dude, you don't know how close I was to that. It's shameful. It's really shameful, especially from where I started out.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it was close to that point. I'm like, no, man, I cannot size out of Walmart. Come on, man.
either that or Goodwill. All right, next item on the docket is from Business Insider. I'm not going to read this whole thing. We'll just go through it real quick. An artist wheeled 99 smartphones around in a wagon to create fake traffic jams on Google Maps. There you have it.
Mm-hmm.
There you have it. That can actually be used to cause traffic rerouting for people who use Google Maps or even Lyft and Uber. They'll be rerouting to different areas, and and sending all these cars into a frenzy.
Yeah.
But that's the sort of stuff that is not preventable for us. There's no way for us to really prevent that from happening in cybersecurity. This guy can cause civil disruption.
Yeah, just by the picture, I think I basically get what he did.
Yeah, well, yeah, he set all the devices to go in one direction, and then there you have it. He puts them all into one little basket, and they don't know which way they're going because they're walking at pace, right? They're going at pace, the barrel, or not the barrel, the wagon.
Yeah, no, he puts it on. He down. Right, so this probably cost him less than $200.
Yeah.
Use old smartphones. Buy an old smartphone, right? That nobody wants, right? That is in low demand. You download Uber or Lyft's app on it. You turn it on. Same app. Right, you only have to have the one account because you can put the same app on multiple devices and open it up on multiple devices. And because it's reading through Waze or Google Maps, yeah.
Do that in New York City, and it'll be chaos.
Yeah,
it'll be absolute chaos and pandemonium. Causing accidents everywhere.
That's crazy. That's then that's one of those out of the box. That's a definitely out of the box thinker. I wouldn't even think of how to apply it that way.
Yeah. All right, this one is from ScienceAlert.com. Scientists are starting to take warp drives seriously, especially this one concept. Let me explain this. It's hard living in a realistic universe, a relativistic universe where even the nearest stars are so far away and the speeds of light is absolute. It is a little wonder then why science fiction franchises routinely employ FTL, faster than light, as a plot device. Push a button, press a pedal, and that fancy drive system whose workings no one can explain will send us to another location in space-time. However, in recent years, the scientific community has become understandably excited and skeptical about claims that a particular concept, the Alcubierre warp drive, might actually be feasible. This was the subject of a presentation made at this year's American Institute of Aeronautics and Astronautics Propulsion and Energy Forum, which took place from August 19th to the 22nd in Indianapolis. This presentation was conducted by Joseph Agnew, an undergraduate engineer and research assistant from the University of Alabama in Huntsville Propulsion Research Center. As part of a session titled "The Future of Nuclear and Breakthrough Propulsion," Agnew shared the results of a study he conducted titled "An Examination of Warp Theory and Technology to Determine the State of the Art and Feasibility." As Agnew explained to a packed house, the theory behind a warp propulsion system is relatively simple. Originally proposed by Mexican physicist Miguel Alcubierre in 1994. I didn't even know Mexico had a physicist. This concept for an FTL system is viewed by men as a highly theoretical solution to the Einstein field equations, which describe how space, time, and energy in our universe interact. In layman's terms, the Alcubierre drive achieves FTL travel by stretching the fabric of space-time in a wave, causing the space ahead of it to contract while the space behind it expands. In theory, a spacecraft inside the wave would be able to ride this warp bubble and achieve velocities beyond the speed of light. This is what is known as the Alcubierre metric. Interpreted in the context of general relativity, the interior of this warp bubble would constitute the inertial reference frame for anything inside it. By the same token, such bubbles can appear in a previously flat region of space-time and exceed the speed of light. Since the ship is not moving through space-time, conventional relativistic effects would not apply. In short, the Alcubierre metric allows for FTL travel without violating the laws of relativity in the conventional sense. As Agnew told Universe Today via email, he was inspired by this concept as early as high school and has been pursuing it ever since. This is very interesting. They're talking about creating a black hole for all intents and purposes, going into one dimension and coming out the other.
Kind of, but it's more like it's actually more like surfing space.
Right.
Yeah, and the means of surfing space is a contained singularity. Yeah.
Well, technically, what they're actually talking about is taking that space-time continuum, if you will, stretching out and using it almost like a slingshot. That's this slingshotting through this.
Well, no, the opposite. Actually, they're contracting it.
Well, they're contracting, but you have to understand, if you're going to move faster, it's just like if you took a look at Star Trek tried that on a few of their programs where you saw them with the warp drive would be engaged, and you would see the space amount expand or get longer. Then all of a sudden you see this thing would then shoot out. They're actually trying to like almost slingshot it. It's literally trying to accelerate it faster through a warp hole or a worm. I won't even call it a wormhole. Mike, did they call it a wormhole in this or no? They didn't call it a wormhole, did they?
No. I look. This is my visualization. My visualization is a slinky on an escalator going down.
Yeah. I would say like that, but you're pulling the slinky and then you're almost letting it go. Fires by even faster. Mm-hmm. So and you would have to be able to do that without increasing its mass, because the more massive it would become, the slower it would become. So you wouldn't be able to increase its mass that way, or at least through relativistic terms. That's how I'm interpreting this.
Well, the question that I have is, will it be able to go? Will it be able to take us farther than the green screen?
I was under the impression that they would use atomic bursts. to get that?
Well, technically, if you're looking at what they're talking about, even if you had an atomic burst, it wouldn't accelerate this thing any faster, since if you try to move something that has mass faster than the speed of light, it would become actually more massive, and so therefore would slow it down. So the faster something travels, the more massive it becomes. So that's what keeps you from actually accelerating past the speed of light.
Right, under conventional physics, right?
Yeah, on the conventional physics. So if you really want to accelerate something faster than the speed of light, you would have to ultimately open up a dimension or to where you could actually pass through space or warp space at a level to where you're curving that space-time continuum closer and closer to you, without increasing your mass in which to do such, which is, I don't know if we have any
Or dark matter exchange.
That could be that, or literally taking the four fundamental forces of nature and combining them into a super force that should be able to accelerate you faster than the speed of light, because we do see that the edge of the universe is supposed to be expanding at speeds faster than the speed of light, and they think that these four fundamental forces are actually joined to create a super force that's creating this faster than light expansion of the universe than we than we can see. But all this stuff, as I said, once again, is abstract. I mean, I do understand it. You got string theory and a lot of other stuff that even complicates it or tries to complicate it even more. But as of right now, I'm gonna just kind of stick to kind of the Einsteinian type of physics and look at Rosenbridge, wormholes and so forth, and these types of things that could potentially accelerate you faster. That's what it seems like they're talking about here, but I don't know if anybody can take a better guess at it. I'm all ears.
No, I as a disclaimer, I am a self-avowed dummy. This is way above my pay grade. Anything physics related is way above my pay grade. Period. I am not trained nor educated in this beyond high school.
Are you a stove analyst?
I've run some audits. That's what I'm saying. I just want to. I just want to know if this will take us beyond the green screen, man. If we can get past the optical illusion that is.
I'll gladly bet you one stove today. Gladly one stove today.
I said on another stream. My journey this week through YouTube has been interesting.
Yeah.
But it's I would look at it as more of a slingshot through the space-time continuum to accelerate you faster, and that means you're advancing space. So the dimension, space and space and time are related. You're advancing that faster. So therefore, if that's being advanced, your questions of mass would actually be negated.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah, John Blaze has his hand raised.
Hey, what's going on, fellas?
Johnny Blood. What's going on, bro?
Not too much, man. See, man, this is the kind of talk right up my alley, man. I love science fiction.
Yeah.
Go ahead, man. Go ahead. Let it get. Let it rip.
I'm gonna give one series and one movie that kind of describes this. But Babylon 5, and in that one they use this thing called hyperspace, where basically ships enter a specific dimension and they can travel faster than light.
That's like slingshotting through. Yeah. So you're advancing space time. Exactly. That's the concept I'm speaking. Yes, exactly.
Yeah, and another one that does something like this would be the movie Doom, but in there they're doing a technique called folding space.
Well, that's the whole thing about warping space, where you're taking one point to the other. You're taking space, literally folding it and bringing those two far points right together, so you can pass right through and move very quickly, and then and that space behind it will then go back to its original shape, and you're good, being able to warp space. It would take a tremendous amount of power in which to do
that. Crazy amount of power. You know, so. And I just use a little bit of Star Trek science here. They use Cochrane's. That's the measurement that they use, based by a guy Zephram Cochrane. But that's the kind of power that they use. That's why they're dealing with warp reactors, matter and antimatter. I guess the closest thing we have on Earth is going to be those hadron colliders that could do something like this. And I guess how do you get something like that on a much smaller scale?
Well, I think once we get an understanding of what gravity really is, you'll be able to really you'll be better able to do that, because that would play a key role in being able to warp space.
Right.
Warp space and time.
Right.
But Newton explained kind of how gravity worked, and then Newton explained what gravity was as a bit of a shape, a shape that you have. It's time and space. You can shape it, and that's what gives it its. That's what gives you your various movements throughout space. Your parabola, your hyperbola, and your circle and your ellipse and all that. Everything travels in conic sections because of curvature of space-time, and giant planets and suns that have huge mass warp space, and this is what actually makes objects attracted to places like to the sun and to other planets, or why you have how would I say why you have a solar system, or why things orbit other planets, is because of the warping of space and time. So all of that has somewhat been explained, but this faster than light game would have to be something that would play a level of dimensionality. You would have to understand gravity and literally find a graviton and be able to employ that in some kind of powered system in which you could help to continue to warp space with that. You have to be able to warp space, right, being able to change to be able to change the shape of space by way of gravity. And I don't know, and we have yet to find that. We have yet to really define what gravity really is. Right. As far as, like, we have the electron and the protons and so forth. We don't have gravity. We conceptualize it as graviton, but we haven't been able to identify it. Anyway, go ahead.
No, I was going to say one thing that we do. I teach X-ray physics, and I teach how we move electrons, and we use a technique called potential difference. Making something that's a negative, and that's one possible thing they could do. Is find a way of changing polarity on things and make them attract. But Mike's not far off with those atomic bursts. I think that in itself would be a way of moving things, probably what we call sublight speed.
Yeah.
Well, if you want to move it, but what he's saying is moving something faster.
Right. I understand that part.
Light. And what we're saying is, how can you see? This is the conundrum that we have. How do you accelerate something faster than the speed of light without increasing its mass?
See,
that's the problem.
Right. Like so, and
that's the problem.
I'll use an X-ray analogy. So when we make X-rays, we basically slam electrons against a tungsten target. Now the electrons travel at half the speed of light.
Right.
Okay. But the X-rays, when the X-rays are made, X-ray photons, they travel at the speed of light.
Right.
Yeah. So actually, to make X-ray is a very inefficient process. We use a lot of power to get a few X-rays. The same thing, I guess, when it comes to these colliders, a lot of power is being utilized. But I got a chance to go to the proton center, which they use to kill cancer cells. They're actually extracting the protons out of hydrogen gas. And so Now, the place that does this, it's a much smaller scale than, let's say, like the Hadron Collider over in Switzerland, but the building itself is still massive. I mean, it's a lot of power. Their power bill per month is $70,000 per month just to do. So, I mean, once again, it's just trying to get something that's that powerful into a much smaller, space.
Yeah, but like I said, really, really moving past this speed of light thing, you have to get past that mass conundrum.
Mm-hmm.
You have to be able to get past that. We the only way we can get past that is by warping.
Right.
Is by warping the space-time continuum, by warping it. And how do we warp that to that level to really ultimately move faster than the speed of light? What keeps us, anything that has mass, you try to apply it faster, it becomes more massive.
And that's the thing about like X-rays. X-rays have no mass. That's why they can travel the speed of light.
Mass, but then, in order to accelerate that faster, you try to then apply more energy to it. You're going to apply more mass by E equals MC squared.
Right.
Okay, so you're going to have to apply more mass to move this thing faster, and therefore you're still in that conundrum of, well, you can't move anything faster because now it's acquired mass.
Right.
More mass you put on, the fact, the slower it's going to become.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a big part of this big part of the problem. That's why you have to be able to warp space-time and be able to, they talk about wormholes and these kind of things, which are ultimately taking space and bending it, and to bending it so the distance that you're traveling will be far less, and then expand it once you go through the hole. So
you need some guys smarter than me, man.
I mean, there's some scientists who were sitting back and saying that this is too difficult of a problem. Maybe the human mind is not developed to the level to think past this. I don't necessarily believe that. I think in order to think through this or find an answer to it, you have to look at it almost like how a baby would. But you would have to change some ways of how we look at physics. And that's the big issue, because then you've got the whole problem with the physics guys and who's in charge of what and what's right and what's wrong, and going through that whole thing. So there's a big political and economic thing that will go around it. But I'm sure that there's a brain sharp enough out here to figure this out. But the answer to this is gravity. If we can figure out what gravity is, that would be a long way in solving this problem.
Well, we also talked about teleportation last year. They were able to execute that on a diamond.
Yeah.
Moving matter from one place to another within a diamond. That's crazy.
That shit is crazy. Yeah, we told me that I was shocked. But anyway.
Yeah, let me go to the last one. This one's from BusinessInsider.com. China's groundbreaking lunar rover found nearly 40 feet of dust on the far side of the moon. I wonder if there was a black man attached to it. Dusty Beta Male Coon. There's a coon on the moon in June. The jig is up. The first rover to visit the far side of the moon has discovered a layer of lunar dust up to 12 meters, 39 feet deep. The rover and its lander, which sits in the moon's Von Karman crater, are part of China's Chang'e 4 mission. They're landing there on January 3rd, 2019, marked the first time any spacecraft have ever visited the far side of the moon without crashing. The rover measured the moon's surface dust with radar for the first time, and researchers from China and Italy described the results in a paper published Wednesday in the journal Science Advances. Lunar dust, also called regolith is a talc-like substance of pulverized rock and dust that settled after asteroids bombarded the moon's surface billions of years ago. The Chang'e's forward findings confirmed that this dust also coats the far side of the moon in a layer that the scientists describe as quite thick. This work shows that the extensive use of the Chang'e force could greatly improve our understanding of the history of the lunar impact and volcanism, and could shed new light on the comprehension of the geological evolution of the moon's far side, the study authors wrote. That understanding will be key for future missions to the moon. Lunar dust can cloud a spacecraft's instruments as it approaches the moon's surface, raising the risk of failure. Peggy Winston, an astronaut who lived in space for a total of 665 days, previously told Business Insider that the Apollo missions had a lot of problems with dust. If we're going to spend long durations and build permanent habitats, we have to figure out how to handle that. I'm not going to read this whole thing, but I think one of the things that you can do with the dust is you can suck it up through a drone, unmanned surface vehicle, suck the dust up and add a liquid to it to create a more solid substance and build something out of it. You're basically building cinder blocks or bricks out of the dust if you can find a way to suck it up, compact it, and use a liquid to bond it. That's my take on it.
Hey, was there any mention, I guess, of this dust compared to the dust here on Earth size-wise?
Oh, you mean from a particle standpoint? I didn't put that in there.
Okay.
All right, this is the last one, science alert. This exoplanet could actually be habitable after all, and it's not even that far. A planet just 124 light years from Earth could be teeming with life, even as you read these words. Astronomers have conducted in-depth analysis of the properties of an exoplanet midway between Earth and Neptune, and found that it could be hospitable after all. The discovery broadens the range of planets astronomers can include in their search for extraterrestrial life. The planet in question is called K2-18b. It may sound familiar because it made big news last year when astronomers found water vapor in its atmosphere. However, back then, the exoplanet's potential habitability was unclear. It's orbiting a red dwarf star, K2-18, smack and bang in the middle of the habitable zone. Not so hot that liquid water would evaporate from the surface, and not so cold that it would totally freeze, but habitably requires more than just being at the right distance. Mars is a great example of this. So I'm not going to read all of this. It's a pretty long read for me right now, but what I will say is that 124 light years is still quite of a distance. One light year is pretty long, and so they're talking about 124. That's pretty long.
Well, light travels 6 trillion miles in 1 year.
Mm-hmm.
At the speed of light. So in 1 year, at the speed of light, traveling at 186,000 miles per second squared, you will travel 6 trillion miles, which is an extraordinary distance. So if 124 times 6 is about how far away that something like this would be in miles.
Yeah, tear up your own planet and then go live somewhere else.
Man, I don't know. Traveling these distances is crazy.
Well, that's why you need
124 light years. Damn.
Yeah, that's why you need a warp drive.
Yeah, right. Wouldn't be possible to get there any other way.
Yeah. Johnny Blaze, have anything you want to add to that?
Nah, he's pretty much on the money, man. Look, we either gonna need FTLs or we're gonna need high-end transporters.
You talking about like a you talking about like a transporter?
I mean, you talking about something that's gonna transport you like like damn near like on Stargate. We're gonna need Stargate.
Yeah. Well, that's what Stargate was. Stargate was a giant space warp, So.
Basically, I'll use an IT terminology. It's like a VPN in space.
Yeah. Virtual private network. Damn. I'm right. I don't know, man. Like I said, we're talking. I mean, I've heard some crazy stuff. Like I watched something. I don't know if I believe it or not, but you guys may have heard of this dude Bob Lazar. I don't know if anybody heard of this guy. Who said he worked in Area 51 and worked on some alien aircraft, which, those can believe it or not. But he said that they did have a warp drive, which was powered by a small antimatter system, and they had and it was moved by a gravity drive system, so they could actually key on to an area that they looked on, and they could calculate its gravity, and they could then mesh this basically matter antimatter kind of drive system and fly there, and I guess they could literally warp space around it. But warp space and travel these distances by doing it. And he talked about some very weird effects that it had, since this had this gravitational warp drive system, that even this thing sitting down without moving, if you went to the bottom of it, you could look around and see literally the ground. When you could be underneath this space vehicle, looking up at the bottom of it, but yet you would see literally the top of the craft. You shouldn't be able to see it, but since it was already warping space while it was still there, you could see the top of this thing from sitting underneath it. So I was like, what? So it was really crazy what he was explaining. But do I believe this guy? I don't know. It sounds great, but we would need to create something like that. You'd have to really figure out some key things, some key fundamental forces here of nature, and this gravity seems to be a big question in all of this. And it seems like if there are aliens out there who are traveling throughout space, they seem to have solved this problem.
Yeah, because they would be light years ahead, right? I mean, they would be at least, at the bare minimum, at least 500 light years away.
Yeah, well, they're saying that this ship and the system that it came from was actually 38 light years away from us. So it was actually relatively close, in that there are quite a few that exist within our galaxy, which our galaxy is of massive size. Just from where we are right now, to travel to the center of it would take over 30,000 light years just to travel to the center of our galaxy, and then to cross it would take almost 100,000 light years to cross our galaxy alone. So we're talking these humongous, incredible distances, which to travel is, you're gonna have to solve some real how would I say, riddles of the universe, and it seems like gravity's at the center of it.
You gonna say something, Johnny Blaze?
Oh no, I mean, the only thing I thought about it, and unfortunately, this would not solve your faster than light issue, but I've seen this in an episode of Star Trek and an episode of Doctor Who. they would use solar sails and try to sail on like solar wind.
Yeah. They said that could take you to sublight speeds.
Yeah, like sublight.
With fusion power, and it would take you a couple of years to actually get up to speed. But once you got that sail kicking, you could actually get to some sublight speed. So yeah, you could do that. I think that's for more shorter range distances.
Yeah.
But I think for these huge distances, if you want to travel throughout your galaxy or intergalactically, if you will, you're gonna have to have something quite a bit different. Which I think the movie Contact, if you ever watched that, Carl Sagan's book that he wrote, they made a movie out of it, which I thought was inferior to the book, because the book was quite superior. But yet they dealt with this issue of being able to travel intergalactically, or with the ability to create an Einstein's Rosen bridge tunnel that connected through the warping of space-time in which to do it. So you could travel very long distances through this wormhole type system. That's actually already been created by others, but you had to be able to tap into the system to get there, and this is what they had. So yeah, it's just interesting thought experimental stuff. But like I said, I love this stuff. I love it. And one of the projects we did that I was dealing with some kids last year, not past, some before last, we actually did a project based on this, and we got an award for it. So it was pretty awesome. So that's why I love talking about this shit, because it's I think the kids in the 21st and 22nd century will be solving this problem.
Yeah, the ones that are born today will be figuring it out 50 years from now.
Yeah, man. And 100 years, you got to look at this 100, 150 years or so. I mean, when you look at, let's say, Newton and Einstein, there was quite a few years between them, almost 300. And then when you take a look at, let's say, I believe when you start to look at the pyramids and how they were built and what they were kind of doing, I think they had some answers to some very interesting issues that we wouldn't even think that they understood back then, but it seemed like they had a great understanding of it and actually made some of this work. So whatever geniuses we had back then till now and today, we've been on this path, and we've been close, but we haven't broken it as of yet, or at least there's no evidence that we have, even though there's a lot of sci-fi and speculators out here saying that certain things that we're doing. CERN and so forth is a couple of years ago, we thought that there was a particle that we were able to send at a faster than light type of deal, and we thought that we actually saw that, but then we found there's some error in the equipment. But yet they're still trying to crack that issue right now, and a big part of that is they're trying to figure out and trying to really define gravity, what gravity is. According to this Bob Lazar, this is element 115 that's out there that actually will help you to do this. But we have this element 115, but have we been able to crack the gravity question? I'm not aware of that at this stage. But this is heavy duty stuff, and we are actively working on this. Go ahead, Mike.
No, I was just going to say, because you've had people in the manosphere denying that space even exists.
Well, you also have to take a real close look at the space between their ears and see what's there.
Yeah.
Hey, man, maybe somebody should write some code so that these kids being born today can solve these problems like games.
Yeah, I think I think you're gonna have to look at this thing from almost an infantile view and apply some heavy duty, mathematics and principles to it, but looking at it from the mind of a child almost to figure this out.
Yeah, and that's what I'm saying. Start developing the game now, and like lead these kids kind of in that path, of kind of solve these kind of problems.
Because it's going to take a large amount of imagination. It's going to take a lot of fantasy imagination to put this together. It's going to take a childlike mind to figure this out. That's literally childlike mind with devastating abstract ability to put together seemingly unrelated events and synthesize them to come up with a whole new understanding of what's going on. And that's true genius. And that's what I think it's going to take. It's going to take, childlike mindset in this, with really, fantastical types of thought experiments to put this together.
All right, man. Thank you all for joining us. Please hit the like button if you have not already done so. Share the video if possible and hit that notification bell so you get all the updates from the Black Brain Trust and those posts on the community tab. Document and description beneath the video for you to reference. Also, make sure you check out the community tab. And if you're interested in getting into IT for the first time, we do offer IT mentorship. If you're trying to go from one IT role to another, we do offer IT coaching. If you have a resume or a cover letter or some salary and wage questions, we do offer advice in that area. If you're in a tri-state area, you're looking for recs for IT contracts to hire, the Goal 11 does have recs on the table. Shout out to O'Shea.
Yep, she's got some new ones.
Yep, shout out to O'Shea in the chat. Shout out to Dr. Phoenix as well. And thank you all. And have a good night.
Hotep, hotep.
Yeah. 1, 2. We ain't even got spit 16s on this. Hey yo, this the best thing that ever happened to rap. Since Big Pun was packing the Mac in the back of the act. It's like getting pulled over by police with a loaded mag and duffel bag and crack in the back. Y'all in hot water. Y'all crab motherfuckers that got too hot in the pot and you got slaughtered. The manager got sorted, you got shorted. We turned around, put it out in the block for it.
Yo, I got rhymes and gats that I'm concealing. If rap is the floor, hip hop is the ceiling. Led from jump, never was we trailing. Before you fight me, you better fight the feeling, nigga. Face it, guard, the base is broad. Edo is grimy, Ace is hard. You can catch 2 L's like your name was James Todd. A&E, avant-garde, the hit squad.
Yo, y'all dudes are similar to cinema. Trained actors like Brad and Jennifer. But yo, I got a flow like Angelina. And I'm a king like Billie Jean, promoter Don and Regina. We've been doing this as long as y'all been alive. So little boys, keep your mouth shut when the men arrive. I look mean as a motherfucker when I drive the chromed out black 450 like 10 to 5.
You'll get bodied hard, so you better have a bodyguard. I get that green like Swiss chard. When the flames pop, you'll never gain props. When the game stops and your chain pops, we getting off at the same stop. I could understand the ocean by looking at a raindrop. We everywhere, you in the same spot. I'ma make it so you rappers never ever name drop.
Yeah, your girl's on my wood like a hungry beaver. If she telling you she home with a fever, nigga, don't believe her. She on top of me, I'm underneath her. Cause your swag is a legal procedure like one receiver. Women hate a grown man with feminine traits. And your body gel kinda smell like cinnamon grapes. Your shampoo's like fruit passion. You the ass in the Louis store, trying to find some cute fashion.
You a no-show, and you won't blow. The people who know aren't talking. The people who are talking don't know. You a hobo. You'll get ate like Ocho by my vocals. I'm #1. Twist your wig like a cummerbund. This whole industry is troublesome. We pop rappers like bubblegum. Don't confuse A&E with them other ones.
When it's time to get wild on stage, I can spit H like Lynn Swan, Alan Page, or maybe Randy Moss in his college days when he was going through that childish phase. But listen, what you witnessing is violent rage. Kinda like a lion that got out of his cage. It's the underground sound that pays. Me and Crazy Eddie go together like brown and beige.
Yeah, the game of soap opera, the days of our lives. Rappers talk shit, then they apologize. No substance, hollow guys. That's why I do my 1-2 and don't follow lies. I'm wax, you Serato guys. You bullshit, and Edo is bona fide. My dogs sick 'em, get 'em. Now they play victim, ain't about them toys. It's about who playing with 'em.